Regulatory Affairs Specialist from PPD Gurgaon.
Good to meet you.
Thank you.
No, can you see my screen? I don't know.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir,
Yes.
it is visible.
It's fine, sir.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
So let me begin without much introduction. And let me tell you that when I'm looking at the research activity, there are many issues, many questions which come to our mind. And I think you're very lucky that you have a formal system where you are undergoing a basic course. When we had started doing our research, it was all really groping in darkness. Let me tell you my background. I am a PhD in linguistics, which is a science of language, from the University of Delhi. And I was there at the University of Delhi doing masters 1972 to 1974. And as soon as I completed my masters in 1974, I got an offer from Punjabi University, Patiala, as a lecturer, to join as a lecturer with 5 increments. This is because when I was in the masters, I already published an international research paper, which is still quoted very highly by people in my field all over the world. So I was really tempted that I would not do research. I would rather join teaching profession. And when I went to talk to my departmental head, who was a legend, who is a legend, in fact, in my field, sociology of language, in the worldwide, he's considered to be a legend. And this is his name was Prabodh Pandit, Prabodh Bechardas Pandit, PB Pandit. Anyone who can type Prabodh, Prabodh Pandit, Pandit on the wiki site or on Google, you can easily see the illustrious career of this gentleman. Some of you might have heard the name of Noam Chomsky. Chomsky is like Einstein in physics. Chomsky is the same in linguistics or psychology or computational linguistics in these fields. He's still living. He's close to 90 now, and he's emeritus professor at the University of Arizona. But all his life he taught in the MIT. The MIT in the whole world is known for a few people, and Chomsky was one of them. So it's a great honor that Chomsky was a great friend of Prabodh Pandit. And in fact, Pandit had got me admitted to MIT to work under Noam Chomsky, which I did not do because for the same reason as his advice was. His advice was, do not join a teaching profession unless you do PhD. That is, you complete your PhD, because our time, we did not have a provision of part-time PhD. I mean, fortunately, you have this provision today. You know, during our time, we had this provision of doing only full-time PhD. If you are a PhD, you are a full-time PhD. Now, with or without fellowship. Now, we did not have any examination such as NET, UGC NET. So it was all depending on our own individual results and the career that we have had. So I got 3 fellowships, UGC JRF, Delhi University JRF, and CIL JRF. So 3 different fellowships were offered. I selected the UGC JRF and joined the program. Now, when we joined the program, I really did not know what exactly I'm supposed to do. Research means what? What is there that I should really do in order to start working on my PhD program? So I started reading things done by the recent people. So there was an electrical engineer in the New York called William Labov, who is a very great man in quantitative field. This engineer came into linguistics, and he studied the language variation in the New York City, entire New York City, through a very interesting set of questionnaire and statistical analysis. And I liked his approach very much. And I thought that maybe I can do a similar thing in Calcutta on the Kolkata Bangla. So I wrote down a proposal and I went with the proposal to Prabodh Pandit, who was a great social linguist, as I told you already. Prabodh Pandit was a PhD from University of London, and he worked with people like Jules Bloch, R.L. Turner, who are all today, as we read those books, we find that they are the ones who actually created the whole discipline. And those were the people who were his PhD supervisors. So I went to him to show him, with a lot of pride, show him my PhD proposal. He took a look at the paper and just threw it. He just threw those 3 pages in the wind. And he said, "What is this nonsense you've written?" And I was so shocked, I came back. I did not know, because we had no training how to write a research proposal. So I came back and started worrying about the ethical issue. Did I make a mistake? Were I trying to copy the William Labov's work in New York City onto an Indian city, Kolkata? What exactly I should do? After 7 days, he called me. He called me and told me that I'm sorry that I lost my temper looking at your research proposal, but I tell you what you are good for. Then I said, "Sir, what should I do? I don't know really. There is no course, because at our times we did not have a course on research methodology." So he said, "Well, looking at your background, your mother is a Bengali and your father is from Bihar, from Mithila. So you know these 2 languages. Now you've also learned Assamese. You know Udaya well. Being in Delhi for so many years, now you've learned Punjabi. So why don't you work on the gradation of languages, the way language varies from one space to the other space? So you look at the way the spatial distribution of language variation and look at it from statistical angle." I said, "Okay, this is a good idea. Let me work on it. Let me go back." And then I started looking at, I did not actually finally, let me tell you, I did not work on the idea that he gave me, because in next year he passed away, unfortunately, at the age of 53. And we had a newcomer who was a great friend of mine, K.V. Subbarao, from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, because all our professors were very well known and internationally trained. Like we had C.J. Daswani from University of Edinburgh. We had R.N. Srivastava from Moscow University. We had Ramarao from Harvard University. We had Chandrasekhar from University of Pennsylvania. So we had actually a galaxy of teachers in Delhi University those days. And we really had to choose which one. So ultimately, I chose K.V. Subbarao, the young man who just came with a fresh PhD. And then I started working on syntax, sentence construction, and the techniques. How do you analyze that? So this was the background. I tell you that methodology, a research methodology, can work wonders for all of us and can actually train us in a way that is not imaginable today. And let me give you the research questions. I hope you can see the slide on etymology of research on the screen. Can you see that? Etymology of research on the screen? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Let me tell you why I'm putting these questions to you today. What is research? Research is a word which was coined in English language in 1570. And where do you find it? Now you might ask me, sir, how do you know this? Well, I know this because there's a website called www.etymononline.com. I've given you the reference there. Actually, you should please note down the reference because whenever you are stuck in a field, in any field, wherever you are working, data science or biotechnology or English literature, go to this website and find out the word that you are stuck with, and you get complete history of the word. So the history of the word of research, I'm quoting from there, it means act of searching closely. Now, some of you might laugh at me and tell me, sir, this is so obvious. Obviously, research means search. But if it is only meaning search, why don't we call it search? Why do we call it research? I think there must be some reason. The French word is rechercher, which is a back formation from old French, rechercher, the verb, which meant in old French, seek out, find out, search in a very close manner, search closely, ढूंढ के निकालो, संधान. In fact, research literally would mean anusandhana, although in Hindi it's called shodh. But shodh also means the same, really search out. So the meaning of this was like finding out diligent scientific inquiry, how to do that, and conduct an investigation which is directed to discovery of some fact. Now, by 1630, there is another 60 years, it meant discovery of facts. And general sense was that you need to investigate into things, making close investigation. Now, R&D is very commonly heard these days. The word R&D, research and development, is recorded much later in 1923. For the first time, the word was used, or expression was used only in 1923, which meant work on a large scale towards innovation. When I'm saying I'm actually responsible for R&D of this organization. Now, that means that from 1923, you actually have been engaged in research and development of an organization of this kind. So that is the background of the word research as a noun. As a verb, it comes from Latin, circere, which means to go about, to wander, to traverse. Now, this is something which was my status in 1974. I was really going about libraries, looking for this book or that book, which is the latest, what exactly is being published, who are the people who are major players today, what kind of journals, what kind of research papers are easily getting published. Because if you look at the research papers, they tell you that this was submitted to the journal on such and such date, it was reviewed, referred to on such and such date, and then it is accepted or rejected or whatever on such and such date. So it looks like, you have to really wander around the research journal with your produce, with your product, and then somebody will take a note of what you are saying. Are you saying something new? Are you repeating somebody else's statements or discoveries? Shall we accept your proposition? And then, of course, they accept your proposition and it's published. So I was actually going around or wandering or traversing through various journals, publications, libraries. You have heard the word circus. Circus is nothing but circle. You know, when you have some performance in the middle and you're sitting all around, that is what is circus, right? When everybody is watching, actually, truly speaking, in your own field, the whole are actually watching what you're going to do. So it is a kind of circus. You are in the middle of the circle. And you're now going to claim that here am I actually trying to discover something, trying to say something new. And somebody has to accept it. They have to accept that, yes, you are saying something new as an investigator, as an inquirer, as somebody who makes research as a career. So that is what is research. So I'm sure that you will have some understanding of what is meant by research. Now, you all know that philosophy, also called Doctor of Philosophy, has something called philosophy, right? So if it is called, if your degree which you are aiming at is going to be called DPhil or Doctor of Philosophy or PhD, which is a Latinate name of the Doctor of Philosophy, then naturally there's some philosophy in it. There has to be some kind of philosophical questions which you will raise. So what are the philosophical questions that we are going to raise? What are the possible philosophical questions? Now, I have given you only a catalog. Obviously, these are not all. For instance, one question is, what do you think of the mysteries around us? Now, obviously, when you are going to work on some topic, you find out where the research gap. What are the unsolved problems in your own field? Unresolved issues in your field. And then you find out, do you have something to contribute to it? If you look at this unresolved issue, can you say something new? So there are a lot of mysteries in each discipline, in each subject. We need to find out where the mysteries lie. You know, this is a lifelong commitment that you're making, because when you are trying to search out the mysteries, it is not that one time you have found out what the mysterious elements are and you are resolving this. You're proposing a resolution of the mystery. No, it's not like that. Because once you've committed that you are going to do a PhD, I assume many of you will also aim at conducting PhD investigations by the newer students. So you will have to guide the new students as to where to find the mysteries, how to find the mysteries. So the pathway that you have selected to find out the mystery, it is the same pathway for which you will provide a guidance to your students. So look there, watch here, go there. I think this is very crucial, that you not only discover the mysteries yourself, you also help your own students to discover the mystery, your own colleagues to discover the mysteries. At times it will happen like this. When you are working and side by side another person has also joined with you, also working for the same, in the same field, but then her view of looking at the elements is different from your view. And you then have to actually argue, look, why is it that my view is better than your view? My view is goes deeper into the problem than your view. Now that is a philosophical question. This will come up. So quite often, two of you, three of you, five of you are looking at the same phenomenon, but from 5 different angles. And one of the angles would click and find out the resolution of the problem. Not all angles may click, or it is also possible that the same problem can be resolved in 2 different ways, sometimes almost contrastive ways. And therefore you have 2 different theories of the same phenomenon. So this is what exactly is the way you go about the mysteries around us. And when you look at this, there are many other issues related to whichever field you're working. Because after all, the mysteries around us have a connect with the human nature, with human conditions. How do they relate to human nature and human conditions? Supposing you are saying that I'm going to find out which of the 2 or 3 or 5 different vaccines for corona or whichever field, encephalitis, malaria, which of this is actually something which is going to be working best? How do you compare? Obviously, the question will be, what will be the methods of comparison? When I say she is more beautiful or he is more honest, do I have a reason? Do I have a set of arguments to say that somebody is more beautiful or somebody is more honest? Honesty, is it something which is a measurable parameter? Can it give us a measurable parameter? This is the very important question which you will always be confronting yourself with whenever you are actually looking at a topic of research. So this is something which is important. When you actually looking at human nature, human conditions, and what are your connection between the topic that you are interested in and human nature, you're also interested in what is the reality of the universe. What is the universal reality? Can it describe, can it be described properly? And at the same time, you will also be looking at the mind, the matter, and the material. Is there a connection between the mind and the matter? Now, so to some of you, it might seem to be a useless question, but think deeply, because a lot of actually some of the most important philosophical statements came from Einstein or from various other scientists, Madame Curie, if you look at Pierre Curie, or also from the great poets like Tagore. So these feel, and at that point of time, it's not how you started. You started as a school dropout poetry, author of poetry, Tagore, and you started as a great scientist, Einstein. But at some point of time, the mind actually will think together in a similar fashion on these bigger philosophical issues like mind, matter, and material. Now, you will also be confronted with this question, are human mind, human consciousness, or intelligence, are they related? Are they interdependent? The consciousness that I have, does it depend on my intellect? Suppose somebody says, Vivekananda got a great consciousness in the company of Lord Ramakrishna. Why? Because he was intelligent? Some other chap did not get it? Only he got it? What was the quality of his human mind? I mean, these questions will naturally be questions which will be bothering you. Similarly, there will be questions. May I request all of you to put your own thing in the mute, because otherwise there will be a lot of disturbances. There is also question of what is science? What do you mean by science? What is scientific temper? A lot of people, a lot of time we hear this statement that, oh, she did not have much scientific temper. So a lot of what she is saying is crap because she did not really look at the things from with a scientific temper. So it is well said, scientific temper, but what is scientific temper? This question will also come up. You have heard the classification like science, social science, humanities. Now, what is humanities? What is humanities? Moni, can you put your thing on mute, please? Yeah, otherwise a lot of noise will come. What is it that is meant by humanities? What is it that is meant by social science? Is social science a real science? So, you often hear about hard sciences and soft sciences. What is the difference between hard science and a soft science? And what is the relationship with all these sciences and the humanities. Now, one can always say that, well, humanities must be something which is to do with human beings, human conditions. Then somebody may ask you, is this something which is fundamentally different from sciences? If so, how is it fundamentally different from sciences? Show me the reason. Show me why you think they are so different from sciences. So this kind of question will come up. And all these are related to a question of research ethics somehow. Whichever field you are working, you will have to be very ethical in your work. It's like you can actually act as somebody else. Like Kangana Ranaut acted as Jayalalitha in a film, which is a biography. Okay. Or a British actor acted as Gandhi in Richard Attenborough's film, Gandhi. But then by acting as Gandhi or acting as Jayalalitha, you don't become Jayalalitha or Gandhi, right? They are separate characters. You are actually like you are entering into the garb of a character and getting enmeshed with the qualities of that character and trying to portray that on film. So if somebody is saying that I'm actually going to follow Lata Mangeshkar, who just had her birthday day before, or today is the birthday of Sachin Dev Burman, I'm going to sing like Sachin Dev Burman, I'm going to give a tune to the songs like Sachin Dev Burman. You cannot be Sachin Dev Burman. You can be better than him, you can be worse than him, you can do different, can be different from him, but you cannot be exactly the same person. So the point is that you can have ideals for emulation. You can act with an ideal that I want to rule the country like so and so, like the Churchill had done, like Roosevelt had done, like Nehru had done. You can be, or you can decide, no, I'm Narendra Modi, I'm going to rule it differently. So it's your choice. And nobody stops you from actually having an ideal. But having an ideal in research is one thing, and copying that ideal exactly into your paper, into your product is another thing. You can actually follow somebody. You can use somebody's argumentation. You can adopt somebody's style. You can identify a problem already identified by somebody, revisit that problem. Fine. To that extent, there's no problem with ethics. But you cannot simply print somebody else's problem from somebody else's published book or a paper onto your paper saying that this is mine. Because then the question will be that you are actually morally not being right. So there is a question of morality and ethics in research. So having known that, then the question is, how do we actually start asking questions? Because remember, a lot of your teachers will ask you, what are your research questions? Okay, you're going to work on data science, but what is the research question that you have? There could be various kinds of research questions, physical, social, humanitarian, psychological, moral, various ways of asking questions, but what are your research questions? And with these research questions, supposing you are able to find an answer to the research question that you have, is that answer going to be useful for human beings? This is something which is very crucial, because how does social cohesion come about? How does your research impact the whole society? If I'm going to discover something, if I'm going to work on something, how that work is going to impact the whole society? Now, this is important. And also the social cohesion is very important in a society, because in a country like Afghanistan today, I have many students from Afghanistan. In fact, some of them very bright students who work on the languages and the cultures that are in remote corner in the mountains of Afghanistan. But in a situation like this, where social cohesion becomes a suspect, it becomes an issue in a country, it melts, it can explode, various problems can get triggered. And you can sometimes what happens is your research can also trigger them. So one has to be very careful and very ethical in asking questions, raising issues, and raising doubts. Let me look at the next slide. Now, philosophical questions can actually be very simple. Sometimes they are very deceptively simple. And they may have far-reaching implications. Or they could be very complicated from the beginning. Somehow, sometimes, when you start working, like as I said about myself, my research ultimately became syntax. So I was looking at the various models of syntax. There are mathematical models of syntax. There are ancient philosophical models of syntax. There are structuralist models of syntax. There are various kinds of models of syntax. My question was, do they leak? Do these models leak? Are they able to cover all kinds of data? Now, remember that you actually can work in a field and try to find out that the theory with which you have started, or the theory which you have thought will help you explain phenomena. Question would be, does it actually cover all the data? Or is the data so complicated from the start that the philosophical questions will have to be rethought about? I must tell you that these philosophical questions that we are raising now or discussing today, they may even challenge the trained philosophers. Many of your teachers in respective fields, with all due respect to all teachers, may still be grappling with many of these issues. And sometimes you would notice that the children in your family, they will ask you questions and put you to shame. I'll give you one example. I also taught in Delhi University long ago, in 85 to 86. I was an associate professor there. Before I went to University of Hyderabad as professor. So Delhi University, when I was teaching, I on the board, our time, we used to start class at 8:30 in the morning, and although you specials we reach by 8:10. You can imagine they will all start from various parts of Delhi by about 6:30, 7 o'clock, so that you reach by 8:10. So it's early in the morning, winter morning, semester had started, a few months had happened, and then I was raising this issue. On the board, I plotted these three words: tense, aspect, and mood. I'm sure all of you know this. All of you had your school grammars. You had tense, you had aspect, you had mood. I said, please tell me, what is the difference between tense and aspect? And I tell you that people were in real trouble. And in my class, there were many who were actually teaching English in various colleges of Delhi University, because they had a system that their college will allow them to start classes from 12 o'clock. They can actually come to Delhi University 8:30 to 11:30. They can attend advanced classes and go back. So Delhi has a system of masters and diploma and advanced diploma. That is, many disciplines have MA first year students and diploma sitting in the same classroom. So the diploma guys were actually the college teachers. They would come to do a diploma, then they will do an advanced diploma, then they'll be qualified to do PhD. That's how they will progress. So in a related field, you can do that. Okay, so when they came and they said, sir, we are teaching English for so many years, but So we didn't even think of this difference between tense and aspect. So this is a very interesting point. I said, look, your child is going to ask you this question tomorrow. He will come back from the school and said, they're talking about tense, aspect and mood. What is this mood? What is this perfective aspect? What is this habitual aspect? I said, these answers are very simple. Answers are tense will have to do with time. And aspect will have to do with state of action. So the heart of the sentence is verb. Verb does what? Denotes an action. Verb can also denote a state. There can be action verb or non-action verb. So the action that the verb denotes, what is the state of that action? Is it happening again and again? Then it is habitual. Has it started and completed? Then it is perfective. Is it something which is open-ended? So it is imperfect. That is how you look at aspect. So when I was explaining like this, they said, nobody explained to us in school like this. You are the only one who are doing it. I said, look, you have to ask this question. Certain things in your life, as you begin working in your field, you may actually assume them to be given, but they are not really given. They have to be questioned. And only when you are questioning the basics, you can become a Pierre Curie or you can become an Einstein. Otherwise not. And it is not that you have become Einstein and or become Newton and there's no change. No, there could be a school teacher sitting teaching in a village school in a remote corner who will write a letter to you like Satyendranath Bose had written to Einstein saying that Mr. Einstein, I think this is where you have gone wrong. And if you look at these calculations of mine, you can actually correct them. Today we call this Bose and Einstein theory. Why? This is because a gentleman who happened to be one of my former vice chancellors, Satyen Bose, because I taught also in Vishwabharati Shantiniketan, and he was a VC vice chancellor there, who would ask this question. And once we decide to prepare a catalog of these interesting questions, what you need to do is, as you start your research, create a catalog of interesting questions. Once you decide a catalog of interesting queries, interesting questions, you will find that the list will grow bigger and bigger. Look, it may seem like an endless list. And believe me, it's a great fun to ask these questions. I think this is very crucial. Now, this slide has a few big side letters. True, beauty, subjective, and objective. Now, you must have understood what I'm hinting at. What is beauty? What is truth? What is the subjective point of view? What is the objective point of view? Because a lot of people will tell you, look, your research has to be very objective. What do you mean? Very objective. How is it subjective? And what is the relationship between subjective point of view and objective point of view? So this is a question which will be coming up in your life again and again. Now let's look at the next set of issues. Now truth, when we're saying talking about truth, let's explore a little more about truth. What is truth? Truth is defined as a property of being in accord with fact or reality, right? If you go and open up the definition in Oxford or Longman Dictionary, they will tell you that it is defined as a property of being in accord with fact or reality. Then the next question that you will raise is, okay, fine, but what is fact? And what is reality? Who will tell me? Because look at this very interesting relationship. I was watching the great fiction writer Sunil Gangopadhyay from Bengali. Those of you some of you might have heard the name, but others may not have. But he was one of the persons like Mahashweta Devi, who's constantly recommended from India for Nobel Prize. He's a Nobel Prize material person. But he's a scientist who started writing novel. And as he was writing novel, the famous filmmaker Rituparna Ghosh was conducting the interview, and he said that, Sunilda, you are a chronicler of the city of Kolkata. How did you actually start chronicling a whole city? How did you start writing history of a time? He said, look, I really did not know how to write novel because I'm a poet. All my life, I just wanted to publish 3-4 books of poetry. One day, my editor, I wanted a job, so I joined the job Anand Bazar Group. So one day, my editor called me and told me, "You have to write a novel." Now I was in real fix. How do I write a novel? And then he asked some very famous novelist, "Tell me, how do you write novels?" He said, "Look, I will tell you. Think about a date." 21st February. Okay, he said, okay, 21st February. So now you start thinking what happened on 21st February? What are the things for which 21st February is famous? So then he said, okay, I can recall that 21st February is a date on which so many young boys and girls have given up their life. They died at with the bullet of the Pakistani soldiers who occupied their cultural territories. I'm not saying land, but cultural territories. How? Because 21st February 1951 is the date when it was decided that the country of Pakistan will have only one official language, Urdu, and Bengali will not be accepted. Hello? Somebody has to mute. Somebody has to mute, please. So 21st February in 1951, the Pakistani army marched through the streets of Dhaka and told them, look, all of you must learn Urdu. It's like Tamilians showing a red flag of Hindi. So that you have to learn Hindi. So like that. And that will be the only official language of the country. And obviously the students of Dhaka University had protested. In fact, I frequently visit the city of Dhaka because on various cultural organizations, the Prime Minister there had put me on their advisory committee. So I'm actually mesmerized to look at the Shahid Minar. The Shahid Minar next to Dhaka University is a place where the students actually gave up their life for language. So what did UNESCO do? UNESCO actually picked up that date, 21st February, and created that date as the International Year of Language, the International Day for Language. Language Day, Mother Tongue Day. Now, Mother Tongue Day, because for Mother Tongue, people have really given up their lives. So that is the kind of situation that happened. So Sunilda was told, think like that. Think of a date. Then he said, okay, I thought about the date. Then what? He says, then you think what happened on that day and start writing about it and start expanding it. And slowly you will find out how to write a novel. So he started actually in the same way and came up with a great fiction, which is in 2 parts, huge, 700 page each, called Shei Shomoy, That Time. Basically, he was looking at the Renaissance of India, that what is called Renaissance in India from Rammohn Roy to Vidyasagar to Ramakrishna, Vivekananda, was it really a Renaissance or was it a failed Renaissance? So his theory was it was a failure, not the Renaissance. Today, many others differ. Ramachandra Guha will differ. Some others will say, no, 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 it was a great Renaissance. He said it was a failure because Renaissance in Europe, when it happened, actually everything actually bloomed. There were great musicians, there were great painters, there were great writers, there were great politicians. Every field, great scientists, everywhere there were discoveries, inventions, something new. That is the Renaissance. In Bengal or in India at that time, what happened? Yes, in some field there were great people like Rammohn Roy or Vidyasagar, but not in all fields. What about painting? We did not have great painters at that time. What about sculpting? Sculpture did not even begin in India at that time. There was ancient sculpture, But model sculpting did not begin as a discipline in India. So that is a point of debate. There could be an argumentation, but basic point that I'm trying to make is that this is a fact or reality which actually Sunil Gangopadhyay as an author thought.
Sir, you're on mute.
Sir, you have gone mute, sorry.
Sir, we can't hear you.
This can happen. I'll come back. I'll repeat what I said.
Thank you.
Can you
You are
see?
audible now, sir.
Yeah, can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, good. So,
Yes, sir.
the very interesting relationship, FACT fact and FICT fict. Fiction, the basic word is fict, and there is fact. So when people say what you are saying is a fiction, a lot of time OTT platform, there are a lot of debates which happen, on OTTs. And they say, no, this is fiction. This is not really fact. So this quarrel between fact and fiction keeps on happening. And you will also have to be part of that quarrel as you're doing PhD, because how much of this is your makeup idea and how much of this is the fact or reality? This will be a question which will be asked of you again and again. Prove me that this is fact. What is your proof? How do we know? So this issue comes up again and again. A fact is an occurrence in the real world as against the experience or feeling. So you might answer saying that fact is something which has happened in the real world. So how do you actually verify? How do you say it really happened in the real world? There are two characteristics. One is called verifiability. Another is called falsifiability. Now, this is very crucial. If I'm saying that something is a fact, then that is something which can happen again, or which has the potential of happening again. If I'm saying that I found out that by mixing this particular liquid with another liquid, the result is a third liquid, then you should be able to demonstrate in a lab that yes, liquid 1, liquid 2, 20 times if I mix, all the 20 times it will result in liquid 3. Right, so that is a verifiable element. So if you are saying that the countries which have multilingualism are the countries which are underdeveloped. Supposing, it's a theory. 1970, I had a big fight with Jonathan Poole because I'm a language planning person. He's also a language planning person. He said that, look, your countries are really lagging behind in development because you are multilingual, multicultural. Of course, today nobody says that. Today, the whole thing has been changed. UNESCO itself has changed its status. So at that point, this question was, can this correlation be established statistically in some manner through some study? So this is the question. Okay. Second point is falsifiable. What is falsifiability? Now, when you actually proposing a theory or proposing an analysis, you quite often tend to go overboard to the extent that you say that I'm saying this. You prove me wrong. If you cannot prove me wrong, then that is true. So falsifiability phenomenon is something which is like throwing the towel in the ring. My analysis is this. My analysis of today's economics of share market is this. Prove me wrong. There are various analysts, Warren Buffett to Jeff Bezos to Akash to Gaurav. If you look at OTT platforms, full of analysis available on the economic situation, share market vulnerability, volatility of the market, etc., etc. And everybody is coming up with a theory. But the theories are proposed as theories because you are actually throwing the towel in the ring, saying that this is my theory. Prove me wrong. This is to be falsified. Only then that is true. In fact, let me tell you that many theorists have a tactic. You must learn these tactics. In fact, I was taught argumentation by somebody called Jerry Sedok. Jerry Sedok is a good friend, but professor of Chicago University. And while teaching the argumentation, he said, look, there are 33 competing theories of grammar. Now, how are you going to evaluate which theory is good, which is bad? You have to evaluate, because all those 33 guys are saying that I'm throwing my towel in the ring, you prove me wrong. So what does one do? What one does actually is, a lot of people did this in every field, in physics, in chemistry, in linguistics, in anthropology, everybody does that. That is, you think about your opponent. My opponent, how will he view this element? Okay. Then you develop that opponent's theory further and further and further and further until a point comes when you knock it down. This is called straw man approach. That you create a straw man, you know that this man is not a man. In the field, my agricultural field, I'm actually creating a straw man, scarecrow. I'm sure you must have seen in large agricultural fields, they put a scarecrow to scare the birds and insects and all that. That is called straw man approach. So you have created a straw man and then you simply knock it off because you know you are stronger. So falsifiability is manipulated in sciences, in social sciences, in so many ways. But this is very crucial, that verifiability and falsifiability. They say that scientific facts must be visible, repeatable, observable, and measurable. This is what is the basis of empirical analysis. So what is reality then? Reality is the sum or aggregate of all things that are real or existent within a system, as opposed to purely imaginary ideas or things. Now, you may actually think of imagination. A lot of people imagine, you may say, sir, is it not true that a lot of discoveries were made because of this imagination? Yes, that is true. Victor Hugo imagined that there was a point of time when people will be able to fly on sky, and then of course aerodynamics people came up and decided that they will come up with discoveries which will make it possible for us to fly. In fact, I must tell you, in my childhood, I had a distant dream, which all of you will laugh at me if you hear my dream. My dream was, I was studying in Delhi University and my parents taught in Calcutta University, and going from Delhi to Calcutta is a tedious journey those days. Students can't imagine flying. Flying was a very rare thing. We would go by train and the trains would take 36 hours. We didn't have Rajdhani Express and things like that. I'm talking about a time when there was no ring road in Delhi. When coming to JNU from Delhi, and JNU was being created before my eyes, JNU was established. So I'm talking about that particular point of time. That I wished that when I'm calling up my parents on telephone, because it's very costly, and then there is no place to telephone, so एक कोई दुकान वाले को पूछना पड़ता है कि भैया जरा हमको phone करने दोगे, then he will charge मनमानी, he will charge whatever he pleases, because there was no PCO, no telephone booths. So you go to the shop and then try to talk to your parents. So I always had a dream that is it not possible to see your parents as you are talking to them? I mean, today you will be laughing because all the smartphones have the Skype and WhatsApp and whatnot, all those facilities. Like today, we are talking to you from a remote corner. I'm in the university. sitting in my office and you are in your own homes or wherever you are. It's possible. Those days it was thought to be impossible. So I was thinking that maybe a day will come when I will just press 467451033 033 Calcutta 4674551 and my mother will appear on screen. Oh my God, what a joy. Now that is something which is possible today. You dream of it, but that is possible. You dream of taking a commercial flight to moon, and now these two guys, Elon Musk, and these people, they're trying to make it a reality. You can buy a ticket for rocket and have a space travel. This was thought to be impossible in Victor Hugo's days. This was thought to be impossible. It was part of his fiction. So what you write today in the fiction, you write about Pushpak Biman. You write about Hanuman taking a flight and reaching Lanka across the ocean. Possible. What difficult? Today's child will say to me, why do you think it is so difficult that you can take a flight and go to Lanka? Can very easily. What was thought to be impossible or imagination can become very much reality. So when I'm warning you that when you're defining reality as in contrast with imagination, think about it very carefully, that what is thought to be imagination can become a reality very soon. Now, these terms often refer to what is called ontology. What is ontology? Anybody has any idea? What is ontology? Have you heard the name ontology? Anybody? No. You must hear the name ontology. One of the greatest scientists created something called thesaurus. Anybody has consulted thesaurus? Like dictionary, everybody must be consulting. But Roget,
Yes,
have you
sir.
heard?
Yes, sir.
Have you heard the name Roget?
Yes.
Roget was a great physical science person, great physicist, engineer who actually thought of creating an ontology, creating a thesaurus. That is, in fact, one of my best students, PhD students, he passed away. He was the dean of a central university, and he got many awards in computational for his computational discoveries. In fact, some of his systems are now working in Parliament. Mahendra Pandey, he worked earlier in CDAC, Center for Development in Advanced Computing. He was one of my first PhD students. He worked on ontology. I told him, he came from a rural background in Gujarat, all those red hair and all that, and so much of dust. And he came and sat in my house, in my quarter in University of Hyderabad, and said, "Sir, I'm not going anywhere unless you accept me as a student." I said, "I will accept you, but I'll give you a difficult topic. Do you think you'll be able to work?" He said, "Yes." I said, "What is that?" I said, "Ontology." He says, "What is that ontology? What does it mean?" I said, "Well, look, when you look at the whole universe of meaning, today you must be actually looking at Google search engine, right? I'm sure all of you are using Google search engine. I remember the day when Google search engine was being made. In fact, I was traveling through US and I was meeting some of those top guys, professors who were working on semantics in my area, my field. Syntax and semantics is my field. So and they said that, I said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm trying to create an ontology, semantic ontology." I said, "Why? What is it going to be used for?"
It's 11 o'clock.
He said, "This is going to be used for search of some kind." I said, "All right." Because those days in library science, I hope you remember the earlier method of library search. Remember those cards, you go to the library and search through your cards. And what are those cards arranged at? PD, P, comma, semicolon. It's called Swaminathan system. And what is the Swaminathan system? Swaminathan system is conceptualization of the whole universe of knowledge in terms of certain integers and certain letters. That is the system called comma semicolon system of Swaminathan. Today, if you go to American library, what does happen? 700, 400, 300, 400 is what? Language. So all things connected with language will come under 400. So 700 will be something else. 300 will be something else. Physics and physical sciences will be some specific area. So if you go to library today, you will easily find out from those numbering system. What is that? Based on what? Ontology. Okay. What is Roget's thesaurus based on? Roget conceptualized the whole universe of meaning in terms of certain broad categories. And within each category, there are subcategories. Within each subcategory, there are sub-subcategories. Within each sub-subcategory, there are still smaller elements. Actually, if you are a chemistry or a physics or a botany or a biotechnology person, you are looking at an element. Suppose they're talking about, in botany, they talk about morphology, right? You have heard the name morphology. What is morphology? It'll give you the names and levels of elements, botanical elements, right? Now, those names, who has given the names? God? No, of course not. Human beings, scientists. On what basis have they given the names? Based on ontology. So ontology is the most important thing in research, in conceptualization, in any field. You have to understand that. What does ontology study? It studies existence, being, becoming, and reality. Based on what? Based on how you could group or classify categories. Actually, when I started studying linguistics as a master's student, I had already done undergraduate linguistics from Sanskrit College, Calcutta. Same college where Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar was a student, and he was also the principal. 200-year-old college. Imagine, this is the oldest college in Hindu college, if you have heard the name, established by the British, and the Sanskrit college. These were the oldest colleges in India. So I studied there. I studied Old Persian, Avestan, Sanskrit, Vedic Sanskrit, and of course, language sciences, modern days language sciences. So when I came to Delhi University, my teachers told me, first you have to unlearn. Whatever you have learned is crap, nonsense, forget it. Start learning anew, start learning afresh. And then only you'll be able to proceed, because we are teaching here absolutely latest, modern, advanced techniques in studying linguistics, which is more mathematical, which is not really anecdotal. So therefore, your whole view will become very different. And therefore, you must first unlearn, and then you must learn. Now the question is, if this kind of ontology is so important, where is it actually used? Okay, let me tell you where it is used. I was told, I will give you my example of my discipline only. I can't give you example from data science, but I'm sure you can easily find out correlate examples. They said that, look, you have to study language. Studying language means how people speak. And you please know that people speak differently, which varies from person to person, time to time, and place to place. You go 2 miles, language changes. Talk to different people, they speak differently. Same language, but differently. Talk to different generations, they speak differently. Talk to men and women, they speak differently. Talk to people or read people or hear people who used to exist 100 years ago. Look at their sound recording. I'm sure some of you have heard a recording of famous speech of Vivekananda in that art society in Chicago. And today you hear people who are speaking today. Must have heard Gandhiji speaking in English or Hindi on radio, and then hear the political leaders speaking today. They're different. Even if they speak the same language, they speak differently. So time to time, language differs. Place to place, language differs. Person to person, language differs. How do you study language? If language does not remain constant at any point of time, what is the theory that you are going to build? So came in a scientist called Ferdinand de Saussure. Ferdinand de Saussure whole family of Saussure family was a medical science person. And Saussure came to study in the school, and he was greatly interested in Sanskrit. He became interested in Sanskrit. I'm talking about 150 years ago. He became interested in Sanskrit. He studied Greek and Latin and German and Russian and Sanskrit. He said, oh my God, there's so much of similarity among these languages. Is it accidental? Or is it historical? The idea was, then he started looking at the theories, the Germans who actually proposed the theory of something called Indo-European. And those of you who are in history or in archaeology would know about this. This whole theory of Indo-European family, cultural family, from where it sprang in 10 different directions. So you have the Hittite Tocharian going to like in Israel. You have the Balto-Slavic going towards the Russia, Ukraine, those side. You have the Iranian going toward the Iran, and then ultimately coming to India. You have the Italians who were going to Italy and then France. You had the Teutonics going towards Germany, etc., etc. So they said, then Saussure said that, look, we will have to make an assumption that at a point of time when I am studying language, it does not alter, it does not fluctuate, it remains constant. Now, this is the same dilemma in physics. If you just compare this, you'll find the same problem that keeps on changing. That, whatever element that you touch, it does not remain constant. It keeps on changing. So this is a big problem in all walks of life, in all fields of life. You have to make certain assumptions. Now, this is very crucial here, that then they have started thinking in terms of categorization, classification, and in terms of some binary opposites. You must have heard the concept such as universal versus particular, internal versus external, abstract versus concrete, qualitative versus quantitative. Where do they come from? There are particularistic point of view and there are universalistic point of view. In every field, you'll have universal laws. Laws of reason, laws of nature, right? And there are particular issues. That if this is the law of universe, of motion, then if this is what is happening, how can we relate this particular element with that element, with that law? This has become a very important thing. Similarly,
Sir, excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, you're in the same slide, sir. You need to move on to the slides, or
No,
explaining?
I will. Don't worry about it.
Yes, sir. Yes. Okay, just, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I'm in the same slide because this is
Yes, sir. Yes. Okay,
most
sir. Thank you, sir.
difficult slide.
Okay.
So the question is, how do you actually look at concrete and abstract? Obviously, I'm sure at some point of time this question will come up to you also. What are the concrete ideas? You'll go to somebody and they'll say, okay, you're giving an abstract notion. Then they say, make it concretize. Concretize the idea. This binary opposite of concrete and abstract is very crucial. So then there are also fact ontology and thing ontology. Now, a great philosopher called Ludwig Wittgenstein, he had described this as the world is totality of facts, not of things. I don't know how many of you will agree. The world is a totality of facts, not of things. Agree? Not agree? Please tell me. Okay, let us hear your point of view. Since somebody is worried about the slide not moving, let us try to move yourself. How do you view this? Is the world a catalog of things or catalog of facts? Wittgenstein thinks in a certain way. You don't have to agree. In fact, you must learn one thing. Do not agree with your supervisor. Do not agree with your textbooks. Do not take anything as for granted. Question everything. Everything needs to be questioned. Every idea needs to be questioned. Test it out. Find out whether it suits your thought process or not. Because that is very crucial. That is where you will become original. If you are able to think like that. Right? So there are two kinds of ontologies. One is called the fact ontology, another is called the things ontology. Similarly, there is constituent ontology and relational ontology. What is constituent ontology? What is relationship ontology? Okay, I give you whatever. Okay, let me give you this. I give you a pen like this, right? Now, how do you describe it? In what terms will you describe it? You open it. Okay. Now, this is one element, one constituent. This is another constituent, right? In this constituent, there is something inside there, which earlier days you could see very easily, like the ink that is inside the ball pen, right? So, question is, each idea, anything that you take this mask. There are constituents. This is a constituent. This is a constituent. Within this constituent, this side, which is the hardened thing, which will fit in here, that's a constituent. Everything has to be, can be divided in terms of constituent. The building where you are sitting in, it has a top floor, it has a ground floor, it has the middle floors. These are all constituents. This is how to look at a constituent ontology. But the issue is, are these constituents the defining elements? Or the relationship between the constituents, the prime? What is a prime in your own discipline? This is a big question which will come up in physics, chemistry, mathematics, linguistics, everywhere. Are these constituents the main, or the relationship that obtains between one constituent and the other constituent, that is to be given primacy? So there are different kinds of ontologies that can come up. To give you a concrete example, which is much less complicated, you must have heard noun, pronoun, parts of speech. All of us have studied in school parts of speech. Noun, pronoun, adjective, adverb. What are these actually? These are constituents of sentences, right? Now, relationship between noun and verb. Can you give me one name for relationship element between noun and verb? If I give you the answer, you say, oh, sir, I knew that. Subject, object. What is subject of a sentence? Subject is a relationship. Subject is not a constituent. Relationship that obtains between noun and the verb, where the noun is the Chalika Shakti, is the driving force for that statement. Man is immortal. So man is the Chalika Shakti. Statement that is being made, man is mortal or man is immortal. Whether true or fact is different thing. But man is mortal in this sentence, or Ram killed Ravana, your sentence. So this is something which is very important, that you are actually giving. Yeah, Amit, you joined late, so actually I have covered a lot in between. So you are not able to see? You're not able to?
I'm not able to see your presentation basically.
Others are able to see? Yes?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
sir.
sir, we're able to see.
How do I resolve Amit's problem? I don't.
Yes, sir.
Amit, maybe you should go to the settings and see if your turn of incoming video is switched off, maybe.
Okay. I'll just check.
The three dots in between, if you
Yeah.
click that, there's an option called turn off incoming video. Maybe it is turned off.
Yeah, those three dots are the lifeline of MS Team. Yeah. Okay. Right.
Does it work?
No, it didn't work, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's crucial what is kind of problem that he's facing. I don't know how to solve your problem, Amit.
I'll just reconnect
Maybe
again
Amit
and then
can log out. Yeah.
Log
in
out and
again.
log in. And
Okay.
then don't turn off anything, no, just log in normally.
Okay, I'll do it. Thank you.
Okay. So there is a book called Categories. by Aristotle. You must have heard the name Aristotle, of course. Everybody knows Aristotle, Plato, and Socrates. So Aristotle wrote a book called Categories. Now, you will notice one very interesting thing. The physical sciences or the hard sciences very closely related to what I'm now speaking, because Aristotle and Plato and these people actually came up with these basic ideas based on which today's science is actually looks. Aristotle talked about ontology in 4 different ways. He says that there are 4 dimensions of ontology, depending on whether you are actually setting up categories. Like I can set up categories. In grammar, they set up categories like noun, pronoun, adverb, verb, adjective. I'm sure in physics there are also different categorization. In each field, there are different fields of categorization. So these are the problems that keep on happening. So that is one kind of way of looking at ontology. The other ontology is depending on the truth and falsity. Whatever you propose, keep on checking on this dimension. True, false, true, false, true, false, true, false. And accordingly set up your elements. So Aristotle says this is another way of setting up ontology. Third way of setting up ontology is whether something which is existing from time immemorial or something which has come up by accident. Accidental element or eternal element. So eternity and accident. This is crucial. And fourth kind of ontology is whether something is looking at the movement of this or presence of this. It can have presence or absence kind of dichotomy, or it can have unmoved and moved kind of dichotomy. Things can be moving in a moving train. So as an engineer, when you're studying a movement, speed of the train, that's a different kind of ontology, different kind of reality that you need to look at. Now, these debates continue. There is something called meta-ontology. What is meta-ontology? Roget's thesaurus was a meta-ontology. What did Roget do? Roget decided, now today, please go back home or open your screen and search for Roget's thesaurus. I'm sure you will see that. If you see Roget's thesaurus, you will find out that Roget had categorized the whole world of meaning into certain categories. Then took up each category, divided into subcategories. And he went on doing that until he reached the bottom. Now you will notice that there are elements which are related in so many ways. For instance, throw. I can throw a piece of paper out of this window. I can throw my employee out of my organization. Are they the same? They are not the same, of course. There is a problem. They are not the same. But the same verb throw is used. Now, if you look at many such verbs, you will find out there are 20 meanings, 30 meanings, 15 different meanings. Now, these meanings actually are crisscrossed in different ontological boxes. Something which is valid in cricket, like dead ball. Is the dead ball same as dead man? Dead idea, dead proposal, are they same? No, there is some characteristics of death which cannot be revived. That is something which is common. So what Roget did was he looked at the whole universe of meaning, and these correlatable ideas were part of the sub categories appearing different boxes. So the same idea can appear in 5 times, but under 5 different boxes, because they mean 5 different things in 5 different fields. Now, in my field, morpheme has a meaning. Morpheme in linguistics is called minimum meaningful unit. Now, I'm sure the word morpheme is something else in biological sciences. You get my point, what I'm saying. So This is where the idea. So you have a whole universe of meaning, and these meanings have labels. What is a label? Tag. You know that this is called mouse. But then there is something else also which is like mouse, which is alive, which is an animal. You get my point? So they will be then classified, categorized in two different places. This will be classified under machine, that will be classified under animal. And then, of course, subcategorizations. So this will be interesting idea that Roger came up with a meta-ontology. And Google is nothing but a utilization of the concepts of meta-ontology onto the computational screen, nothing else. The whole idea of Google search or any other search engine is something which is purely based on meta-ontology. How you categorizing the ontology, depending on that. Those of you who are in computer science can do well to go back to the DARPA days, when in the DARPA days, when the American military and those who are connecting the internet, controlling the internet, there's something called ICANN, which connects which controls the internet. I'm sure you know that. In fact, when you create a website, the ICANN will have to ask you this question: who is about the website? And ICANN will actually allow you or disallow you to conduct or create or maintain the website. In fact, for last 5 years, we have been struggling. I was the chairperson for ICANN of the Indian languages, because all those Indian languages were to enter into ICANN now in a major way, because now in Indian script, you can actually create a new website, which was not earlier possible. Earlier, आपको अगर कुछ करना है, जैसे sunita.com, so you have to write SUNITA. No, abhi you can write in Hindi script Sunita and .com will allow you to register Sunita with Hindi script. That's a great challenge, actually. It's a big challenge, because all over the world, all computers will have to recognize you as same way as in India you will recognize yourself. That's a big challenge. In fact, there are 160 different versions of Roman. Many of you think that English writing system is so unique. Oh, it's so easy. No, it's not. In fact, a Roman chairperson and I met in Tobe, and he came to sit in my session to find out how we resolved in India the issue of Tamil script and Telugu script and Kannada script and Bengali and Gujarati and Hindi all together. To learn from there how they can handle Roman, because Roman has 160 versions. So that is a big thing. In computer science also, how the internet is run is a major element, because one mistake you make, your crores of dollars will be swiped off from your account, because the internet is crucially dependent on the ICANN. And these an acceptance of an ontology of a whole system which is based on certain principles. And these principles will have to be agreed upon by the engineers, by the linguists, by the semanticists, by the bankers, by everybody. Only then you can make changes in the icon. So that is the big problem. So when DARPA days, when the initial experimentation was being done between the American military intelligence and the Internet Governing Authority, that was an experiment. Nobody knew that it will grow into a whole, explode into a whole domain which is available to you today. Today, this MS Team is a domain. Skype is another domain. Zoom is another domain, platform. These domains are governed in certain manner based on certain principles and rules. You violate those rules, you're out. You must be noticing that Play Store or Google Play are throwing away many startups because they are violating those rules and the basic rules of how an app should work on mobile. There are some malicious things which come into app and create huge problems. So, I mean, these are things which appear to be very simple. They're not so simple. They're all interconnected things. So there is domain ontology, there is interface ontology, there is a process ontology. What is domain ontology? I gave you example of Google is a domain, worked on internet domain. There are many other domains that are possible. Face-to-face channel can also be a domain. Radio wave or radio can also provide as a domain. Films can provide as a domain. Letter writing can give you a domain. Or interface ontology. What is interface ontology? Sometime back, I'm sure you remember that films could not be seen on mobile. Do you remember that time that you could not see films on mobile? Because the film had a technological nature which is not possible to be shown on smaller devices like mobile. Also remember, films were not possible to show on television. Initially, television was a separate entity. Radio was a separate entity. Film was a separate entity. But the merger of the technologies have happened. This merger is a great merger. And thanks to this merger, today you can have an Apple with iTunes, with even Apple can have Windows. So could you imagine? There was a point of time when there was a fight between the authors. Some authors, Americans, they would use Apple and we would be using Windows. Today I'm using Apple to talk to you, but I'm typing this thing on Windows, the presentation on Windows. So the merger. Someone, please mute. Yes, thank you. Yeah. So this is an important point. Now, this question of philosophy, you think is not a common thing in Hindu philosophy and in Western philosophy. There are similar thoughts that have come up. For instance, there is something called monism in philosophy. You can be monistic, you can be pluralistic. You must have heard these words. Thanks to BJP days, there's a lot of people are talking about Dvaita and Advaita. Right? Even those people who did not know what is this, they have also come to hear these words, Dvaita and Advaita. What is Advaita? What is Dvaita? In fact, this has very interesting consequence for research methodology. So, in Hindu philosophy, much before the Plato, Aristotle, and Socrates came up, much earlier than that, the Sankhya philosophy, you must have heard the name. A lot of people these days think that, these guys, Sankhya, Vaisheshika, this is all old timers. They are all useless. They're not useless. Those guys are actually very interesting ideas they had. They came up with, how do you view the whole world? He says the whole world consists of two elements in every sphere. One they call